Okay, Joel Wendt here. More videos on real anthroposophy. I just tried to record something and it didn't work quite right. So I'm doing a do-over. Nothing new there. Anyway, let's take a look at what we're doing here and see if we can maybe make some sense out of things, because gotta make some sense. Anyway, when I began the first one, I went off on a little kind of teasy thing of the leadership in Dornach and the councils in America, and some people might think that's kind of not humorous, but let's do it again. What I said was, hey, if you're in Dornach or the councils in America and you're watching this, I'm coming to get you. Are you scared? Are you shaking in your boots? Hey. And real anthroposophy is about enjoying yourself as much as anything else, and I'm going to enjoy myself in these videos. Okay, so what did I start to talk about last time? Well, I reminded everybody of what I talked about the first three videos, just a little bit, gotta make connections. Otherwise, you read Rudolf Steiner, he always seems to start in the same place, and from one lecture to another he recapitulates a little. So what did I talk about in the beginning? Well, I said, among other things, that I was going to do a better job leading the people interested in real anthroposophy into the 21st century, better than what comes out of Dornach and the councils in America. I gave it the best shot I could. I sent letters, I went to conferences, I wrote articles, I've done spiritual research, I've done all this stuff, and I couldn't get purchase inside the Anthroposophical Society and movement, largely because they have a hard time with the scientific impulse, which is what I talked about last time. And it's very understandable in a way. And at the same time, well, it's complicated because there's such a variety of people that are part of the society and the leadership and so on and so forth. So anyway, I also said that not only can I do better, but I can demonstrate that I can do better, and I brought out the second coming of Christ, and I said, that's the big deal in the 20th century. It's not the Christmas conference. Sorry. That's sort of spiritual belly button spirituality to think that the Christmas conference is this big deal when it's the same century the second coming was inaugurated, and Rudolf Steiner was the John the Baptist figure of that event. And not only that, but we're already getting Gospels of the second coming. And by Gospels, I don't mean, by the way, to imply holy books that we have to fall down and worship and quote and think are fixed, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to talk about one of those today, Ben Aaron's book, but basically the word Gospels means good news. It's good news that the second coming has happened. And I'm going to talk about people who are spreading the good news, which includes me. Okay? Now, another thing I talked about is people doing certain kinds of work who were extraordinary in the 20th century, and Owen Barfield. I'm going to do Barfield because people need to hear about this man and the work he did. He was an extraordinary anthroposophist. Extraordinary anthroposophist. He understood living thinking, he practiced it, and he applied it to the study of language. And my goodness, if we think about it, in the beginning was the Word. And here's a guy who ventures into speech and meaning and all the different qualities of the Word as manifests in the creation. And he's got more interesting stuff to say about that than people can imagine. Okay? And I also said, hey, you read stuff very carefully, you do the right kind of research, which like Garish did in the article, it's on my website about the Christmas conference, and you come to the conclusion that Steiner said that the Christmas conference failed. And not only can you come to that conclusion just from this lecture, all you got to really do is look at the history of what happened after Steiner died. Those people didn't manifest anything comparable to what the idealism of the imagined magical thinking Christmas conference that's bandied about today. They lost it. They fought, they kicked each other out, they complained, they whined, they said this person said an untruth and this person did this bad thing. It's not a good period in the history of the society, although it's very understandable. It's very human, you know. Steiner held these people together by a force of personality and will. And he tried to get them to develop the qualities which would enable the Anthroposophical Society to continue to have a relationship to the spiritual world, which he fostered when he joined his karma to the society and became the leader of the society instead of the teacher standing outside it. This was the hope of the Christmas conference. It didn't happen, sorry. And you don't have to read Gersh's article, you just have to look at the condition of the society and you can see the whole thing fell apart. And in my book, in my article, Saving Anthroposophy from the Anthroposophical Society in Movement, I write about how this is not only expectable, it's the way it has to go. We're involved in incarnating anthroposophy, and anthroposophy is such an incredible thing. It's not going to catch all at once. We're not going to do it in 1 century. It's not going to happen even when Steiner lived. He tried. It didn't work. It's in the 21st century. It's up to us. We got to try. That's what I'm doing. That's what these videos about, Real Anthroposophy, are about trying to further incarnate anthroposophy, which is an amazing thing. And it's not exactly what Dornach and the councils in America tell you it is. It's quite exactly something different. And this is connected to the fact that the scientific impulse doesn't live within the society in the present. Without the scientific impulse, you don't understand what Steiner did. Anyway, so where are we going with this? Well, I'm looking at the time here. I'm going to talk about this book, Theory of Knowledge Implicit in Goethe's World Conception. Where did this book come from? Well, here's this young guy going about Europe. His name's Rudolf Steiner, and people can see he's pretty brilliant. He doesn't say much about his inner life because he got kind of burnt when he was 12 and tried to talk about the fact that he could follow a teacher that had died that he loved into the afterlife. And he reached out and tried to express himself as a person with spiritual experiences, and he got burnt by the society of which he was a part. And so he didn't talk much about that stuff for 30 years. And then he came out and talked about it a lot in a really cool way. Anyway, so there you go. He's 22 or 23 years old, and what happens? He gets, I'm trying to make my clock here so I can keep track of what time it is. He gets picked to edit Goethe's scientific works. Now that's an amazing thing. A genuinely, fantastically amazing thing. At the start of his productive life as a thinker, he gets invited to edit Goethe's scientific works. Okay. He does that for about a year, and then what happens? He realizes that Goethe never thought about thinking, never developed an epistemology, anything formal in the field of philosophy. He just did this really amazing way of thinking about things. And Goethe understood he was doing the right thing, and then Steiner says, well, maybe I better sort of fill in the background here. So he writes this book. It's called A Theory of Knowledge Implicit in Goethe's World Conception. Now, if you remember last time I talked about Owen Barfield, you know, and Owen Barfield has a connection to this book. I have a connection to this book. A lot of people ought to have a connection to this book and don't, and I'm going to get into that next because it's very important that we understand this book. If we want to reground real anthroposophy in the 21st century on the work of Rudolf Steiner and follow in his steps, follow what he taught, and we start with where he started. Hello? Does that make sense? Yes, it does. But Dornach and the councils in America don't talk about it because they don't understand. Well, that's sad. But we've got to get past it and move on.